Come on, we're so close. Excuse me, wind. I just need another 30 seconds. 30 seconds, all I need.
Never mind, we're filming this intro inside. Hey guys, Brass Facts here. The Holosun IRIS 3 laser aiming module is probably one of the single most anticipated devices for me since I started this channel. So I basically bugged Holosun nonstop to send me one right up until they did. Because the device released to the public basically imminently after, I sped ran this review, doing it all in about 1.5 months, 2,000 rounds, 6-day sessions, 5 night vision sessions. My friend Maestro Beast over here also got one several days after I got mine, ran his for about 1,000 rounds and 3 night vision sessions. My friend from Oregon, you've seen him round a couple times, also ran his for about 2,500 rounds. So to say we really went all out in this review would be an understatement. Regardless, I'm still late to the show. Hop and Forum Our Ranch have already beat me to the actual review, and their reviews are pretty comprehensive. So as I'm writing the script, I'm actually going to do this the other way around. We're going to speed run the actual features on this thing and then spend a lot more time comparing this to the rest of the market to really make the case as to why this thing is such a big deal, as well as talk about my experience over that condensed review session. So what exactly do we get? We get a very compact triple function laser, so that means we have Viz, IR pointer, IR illuminator. The IR illuminator has a little hat trick in that there's this little slider on top with detents between positions, allow us to adjust the divergence. It's got a very basic cross-bolt mounting interface, which if you've watched my older laser aiming module videos, I'm actually quite happy to see here. It is very lightweight at about 8 ounces, and the form factor is in the smaller end of laser aiming module devices. On the back, we have a very traditional dial selector mode that you're probably going to set and then forget, mostly because the detents on this thing are so horrific that you're going to struggle to adjust this on the fly. And yeah, actually, that's about it. Another video, another Venture Surplus ad read, which means we're still talking about cold weather gear options. Let's ignore the fact that Utah is currently broken, and right at the end of this review, the temperature spiked from about the 15 to 20 degrees that I had to tolerate to fucking 65 degrees. Excuse me, it's February. One thing that I've revisited is the Balaklava. What a weird name. And I hate these things because I grew up skiing, and these things suck when you go skiing. But I've recently discovered the synergy with these bad boys and helmets. Turns out, I spent a lot of good money to make sure my helmets are able to breathe, which is nice in the summer, but not so nice in the winter. I was suffering as a result as I dumped all of my heat out of my head while shooting. I look a little ridiculous, but that's okay because now my head's warm. Because this is Venture Surplus, we gotta get that waffle pattern synergy. So make sure when you go ahead and buy this waffle pattern balaclava, fucking God. When you combine the set of Waffle Level 2 pants, Waffle Level 2 shirts, and the Waffle headpiece, you actually get a set bonus where you're no longer able to pronounce the word balaclava. Fuck! At first glance, this sounds kind of boring. Oh look, another laser aiming module, this one from Holosun. But as someone who's owned basically every laser on the market, I can confidently say this is the first laser to check the box of illuminator performance without a glaring disqualifying fault, issue, or insane price tag. That might seem like quite the statement, so let me back that up. Let's speedrun the entire laser aiming market. The baseline is our full power military lasers like the PEC-15, Diebel A2, 25 milliwatt laser, 50 milliwatt illuminator, and you can get them on the gray market for $1,500. Gray market because these are military lasers, and thus if you break them and you send them in for repairs, L3 and Steiner will thank you for your service for returning stolen government property. As such, I think they're completely disqualified in the current age. Of course, you can get the civilian legal variants of these devices, such as the Holosun LS321, the Steiner A3, or the Diebel D2. We don't talk about the app PLC here. All of these are extremely neutered. They say gear doesn't buy skill, but if there's a single item that's going to cripple your ability under night vision, it's trying to use a restricted traditional laser across a wide range of lighting levels and anything past about 75 yards. Take it from my cameraman here. He's been shooting with us for 3 years now, and he's still running a civilian powered laser, and he regrets it about 20 to 30% of the time.
That was all misses.
Yep.
Do you want to try with this one?
What about the Steiner D2? It uses a massive LED illuminator, matching the illuminator performance of our unrestricted laser aiming modules, but due to the design, it is still FDA legal, meaning you can still repair it and warranty it and all that stuff. It's also not horrifically priced in the grand scheme of things, about $1,500 to $1,700, and it checks all of our boxes. But to steal hopism, the D2 is the pinnacle of American exceptionalism. Massively powerful, but horrifically obese. Despite this being a decent buy, and still one of my main recommendations, well, until the IRIS came out, strapping a 6-month-old child to the end of your gun is a bridge too far for many. Also, the emitter lets out a visible hue when turned on. Moving on to V-cell devices. In 2017 or so, I don't know, I made that number up, V-cell tech came along as a workaround. All you need to know is that we could get that 50 milliwatt illuminator, but not laser, without FDA slapping your peepee. You guys know these devices as the MAL, Engel, and Raid XE. That's right, it's the full package. But unfortunately, all of these units are using reinvent the wheel designs, so they all cost fuck you money. The only remotely affordable one is something like the US Night Vision DIRV, which not only costs a good chunk less at about $2,000, it also has one of the single best footprints in the market. Unfortunately, these units are a bit unrefined. Both of my units developed some issues over their lifespans. These are absolutely not $2,000 of quality. Recently, there's been a huge influx of laser aiming modules from China at the full power level, coming in at an extremely affordable price. Keeping it short, however, the sub $500 units that we've seen tend to suck ass. The Somo Gears and the HFXCs come to mind as checking the box of full power and price tag, but they do not tend to check the box of reliability. I've broken every single one I've reviewed without even trying all that hard. And you can't actually get these easily repaired, much like the full power ones. My first Somo Gear, they just refused to warranty it, and the second one, an Engel, they did take it in, and they did say they were going to warranty, and then they ghosted me. That was 7 months ago. The HFXC seems to be going down a similar path. The only company in this regard that has any success seems to be Laser Speed with their M6TR. Full power laser, illuminator, reliable, costs $1,000. And the fact that Cold Harbor, a very reputable company, is selling a modified version lets me feel a lot more comfortable about recommending these. In fact, I'd argue the M6TR is on the path of being that unit we desire so much. But this is more or less a brand new company from our perspective that is operating entirely out of China and needs to still use eBay to sell directly to America. So while it is a good choice right now, I cannot say for sure how long that will be true. Alright, let's see how the IRIS compares going down this list of requirements. For starters, the IRIS is looking to be incredibly reliable. Not only does it have a track record of the LS321 series being incredibly durable, even compared to military DoD style lasers, so the A3, A2, and the PEC-15, but ours also held up exceptionally well across a number of different products. What about the illuminator performance? Yeah, we already said it, it's got that 50 milliwatt illuminator, so that box is also checked. What about device longevity? Well, Holosun, despite having a Chinese origin, at least parent company-wise, the actual company itself has a long-standing track record of operating in the United States, warranting products, and, backing their stuff up. So we also have that box checked. And on top of all that, this is actually turning out to be one of the smallest and lightest units on the market with one of the best divergence adjustment styles available to us. And all of that can be had for $900. So that's the conclusion of the video, right? Is it the best unit on the market? No, there are many units that exceed the performance level, the ergonomics, or the design of this device, but it's good enough, and that's really important given its price bracket and where in the market it wants to represent itself. Before this point, we didn't have a solid entry-level device, or a device that similarly, for those that have maybe already bought a MAL or bought a Raid XE, but don't want to spend another $3,500 for their secondary and tertiary lasers. This really kind of fills a niche that has never really been filled, and anything that has attempted to fill it has always come with some weird, jank, Achilles heeled, or other nonsense. For the first time, we have something that is well priced, exceptional value. It performs 90% at the level of the highest quality units available to us, and that is pretty damn amazing.
Oh my gosh, rare Socko pets. Look at that drool. Look at the drool. He's drooling all over me. Hi.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Hello.
with a complete inability to actually structure a video with any kind of flow, pacing, we just did the conclusion. Now it's time to talk about my experience with the device, the good, the bad, the autistic nitty-gritty. One thing that I've really glossed over so far is the divergence slider. At first glance, it seems kind of more the same. Yeah, we have a divergence slider on basically everything. Sometimes it's a dial, sometimes it's a kind of bezel thing. Okay, this time it's a slider. What's the big deal? Well, it's important because we want to be able to use this stuff on the fly, which is something most units come up very short at. This allows us in the moment, say on the approach to a structure, to go from narrow beam to wide beam, or as you exit from wide beam to narrow beam. It's also important because it allows us to vary intensity on target without having to switch out of full power to low power modes. And this is a big deal because with night vision, the difference between not enough power on target, the perfect amount of power on target, and too much power on target is actually quite narrow just due to how night vision works. And this allows us to change that on the fly. A slight pet peeve of mine, though, is that you do have to let off the fire button, then you reach your thumb over to the divergence slider, making it not quite as seamless as the maul, meaning the device has to come off, or you have to double-click it on to see the results downrange. With the maul, you just, switch the button instantaneously. But this is the next best thing, allowing you to switch on approach to, say, a building from focus to flood, after maybe moving to a new position to a maybe more narrow beam when you realize, oop, I don't have quite enough illumination, or when you are static and you're trying to shoot a long-range target and you're struggling to see that little itty-bitty target in the darkness. Technically, most laser aiming modules have some form of beam divergence, but really in practice, this reaches a ergonomic threshold where everyone is going to be willing to fine-tune this thing on the fly, while with traditional designs, you're very often going to just deal with it until it gets so bad that you have to do something. Now, it's not to say the illumination package on this thing is perfect. For this review, I've kind of just slotted laser illuminators into high power, so around 50 milliwatts, and low power, as sub 5 milliwatts, but there's actually a little bit more nuance to it. According to 4MR Ranch, who metered his iris, it's actually a little lower than 50 milliwatts, around the 40 milliwatt range, which is going to be lower than our, say, M6TR, MUL, Arrayed XE, which are all slightly past the 60 milliwatt mark. The D2 is scorching hot at around 600 milliwatts, and even the standard PEC 15 full power is beating out the iris on power level. This sounds like a massive con to the iris, but in practice I think it matters less than you imagine. The D2 doesn't actually look like 600 milliwatts at all, and a good chunk of that 600 milliwatts is going places other than your target, more on that in a second. The MUL and M6TR, while brighter at their standard setting, can be matched by the iris by simply closing the divergence one notch tighter. At full power PEC 15, while on paper brighter, never actually look that good downrange, with inconsistent illumination pattern throughout the, petri dish circle and a bunch of blobs and crap on it that make it look like a 48-hour bacteria culture. So while you'll notice that the more powerful units, especially the one with also a full power pointer, will be a lot more consistent in brighter cities or brighter moonlit nights, we're really splitting hairs at this point. In practice, at a 400-yard target on a moonless, overcast night, I was able to see and get first-round hits on a target with the iris about as well as I could with the MUL C1 Plus or full-power M6TR. In fact, because I could adjust the divergence, I was able to be a little bit more consistent than I was with the A2 I brought along at its full-power setting. Which actually, as a sidebar, that thing has a full-power laser that you can't switch off of, and that was a huge pain in the ass at 400 yards as it bloomed out on target. Same deal with the M6TR. In fact, further leaning into full power pointer versus civilian power pointer, not the illuminator, pointer, there's actually an added benefit on top of all that the full power pointers tend to really kind of create this laser beam effect, most prominent from behind, but also visible from other angles sometimes, versus the civilian power lasers, which typically don't actually ever really do that, as there's just not enough oomph on the pointer itself. I will mention that the most converged pattern of the iris is virtually useless. Even at 600-yard targets magnified, I would argue it's too tight. The laser would be much better if they got rid of that setting and added it to the range of motion on the other end, so more flood and slightly less focus. With no effort of a clean transition, because I don't know how to write in script, the illuminator and pointer are all housed in the same housing. which means your laser will remain centered in the illuminator. Actually kind of useful at medium to closer range targets, as you can kind of bracket the target with your illuminator pattern and not worry as much about the laser, especially on rapid fire. Who am I kidding? It's mostly so your OCD will remain undisturbed. Unfortunately, due to this and the decision to put the illuminator inboard, means a front sight block, or probably most BUIS devices, will occlude about half the emitter, which technically means you can still use it because you're going to get illuminator pattern on your pointer, but it looks ridiculous and you're going to get bullied when you show up with a setup like that, so you better not bother. I do feel compelled to mention, despite me not really giving a shit, about the fact that this thing has a noticeable diffraction pattern, likely due to the fact that the emitter itself is on a sort of sliding housing, with a ring artifact appearing noticeably at the edges, especially at the extremes of the slide. At first glance, this looks kind of horrific, but in practice, while it's a lot more noticeable, basically all laser aiming modules on the market have some form of diffraction. At the bottom end, we have our military full power units, which actually have very, very low diffraction, both on barrel and kind of as a ring artifact downrange. We look at something like the M6TR, and yeah, look at that, we got some diffraction, though it's a little further out, though significantly brighter. Looking at the MAL and other VCell devices, they don't quite have that distinct ring artifacting, but they do have a lot more splash than we expect compared to our traditional full power lasers. And then we get to the D2 being by far the worst, just carpet bombing the entire area around you with IR if you're doing anything other than upright shooting. Technically with the D2, it's reflection, not refraction, I think. Whatever, shut up nerd. Okay, moving on. The IRIS 3 also ships with a tape switch. A+ for effort, but we're going to go with C- for execution here. It takes up a ton of space because it has a Viz override button, which is cool. I didn't actually know Crane could do that, but because it's a single port only, the Viz override isn't pairable with a white light, which I thought was the whole point of a Viz override. Maybe not, I don't know. Personally, for me, I think the unit is small enough not to need that tape switch, and when you do use a tape switch, you're gonna buy a mod button like every other self-respecting NV nerd due to the form factor alone. I mentioned this in all of my videos, so I might as well mention it here. Yes, the IRIS seems to have a slight wandering 0. I started with a 0. Hey, all of you treating this like an audiobook, it's time to look at the screen. Starting out, I had the laser basically zeroed to my 0 at 100 meters. It's not the best converging 0, but I do it for review's sake so I can actually very easily track what's going on with my 0. After about 1,000 rounds, it had shifted slightly up and to the right. I then recentered, and unfortunately I lost this picture, but after 1,000 rounds, after that first 1,000 rounds, it had now shifted up and to the left. I keep saying this so it sounds like cope in a broken record, but all laser aiming modules struggle to maintain a perfect 0, as their 0 mechanism, as far as I understand, isn't quite the same as a scope zeroing mechanism. It's a little more springy, and we also tend to put these things on friction fit handguards, which is the norm nowadays. So to me, this is within the error margins I've seen with all units, 3700 MAL included, and better than, say, something like the M6TR. Finally, the IRIS actually has a pretty noticeable delay on button release. That is, when you let off of the button, the laser stays on slightly longer than average. In theory, this is 100% a non-issue. You're not going to get killed in the sheets because your laser was on a quarter second longer. But it is jarring for someone that has spent a lot of time on night vision devices. And if this is because the device needs to be armed or has logic on board to handle that Viz override, we can just go ahead and get rid of the Viz override for the next generation, please. And yeah, thank you. Actually, on that note, if I'm throwing out suggestions, put the button on the slider so I can keep the device on while I'm moving the slider and kind of adjust on the fly. That would be cool too. All right, cool. I think that's mostly it. Which, I guess I already did the conclusion, so yeah, I'm out of here. See you later, guys.
High society. The peasants. Are you being helpful? Are you so helpful? Do you want in? Oh, no! Oh, it was close. Holy shit, it's windy. No. Are you
you a dog. It's much warmer in here, isn't it? But you don't care because you're a dog and you actually are very well insulated. I got your nose. I got your nose. You're very tolerant, huh?